If you're a nurse or healthcare professional striving for growth, balance, and career success, you'll love The Nurse Keith Show. Hosted by nurse and career coach Keith Carlson, this podcast delivers invaluable advice to help 21st century nurses thrive. On The Nurse Keith Show, Keith explores career management, self-care, social justice, and even entrepreneurship. Through inspiring interviews and expert insights, he'll help you create a satisfying career and life. Listen and follow The Nurse Keith Show on your favorite podcast app, and you can find all the links that you need at healthpodcastnetwork.com/nursekeith. That's healthpodcastnetwork.com/nursekeith.
Hi, I'm Dr. Raj Sundar, a family physician and a community organizer. You're listening to Healthcare for Humans, the show dedicated to educating you on how to care for culturally diverse communities so you can be a better healer. This is about everything that you wish you knew to really care for the person in front of you, not just a body system. Let's learn together. The appointment's running late. Your next patient enters, a middle-aged woman clutching immigration papers, and her adult son trailing behind. She speaks in rapid French, gesturing toward her chest. The son translates haltingly. My mother, she says the pain, it comes like fire. You notice her hands trembling. Part of you thinks, this is not the visit that I want. And I've had this feeling too, and when it hits, how am I going to address this in 15 minutes? And this is about more than time constraints. This is about the weight of history that just walks into your exam room. The echoes of colonial medicine campaigns that has forced vaccinations without explanation. The trauma of watching neighbors disappear during conflicts. And the grief of burying family members thousands of miles from home. What do you do next? And I've never claimed that I have easy answers to some of these harder questions. But my hope is that understanding brings a little bit of clarity and maybe a little more presence in the care that you're providing. Today, we're going to talk about the Democratic Republic of Congo, which has a long history of conflict, as well as a history of violence, and many, many refugees that have attempted to flee a country that has been destabilized because of numerous factors. We're going to focus on healthcare today. And healthcare looks different there, just like it does in most countries, compared to what we call Western healthcare system. One doctor for everything. Relationships built over time. That's what the Congolese patients have experienced. And when they arrive in American healthcare system, they bring these expectations shaped by this history and invisible wounds from decades of war, displacement, and loss. Today, you'll hear from Jean Jacques, Director of Interpreter Services at Harborview Medical Center. His journey includes fleeing from Congo, serving in the U.S. Army, and now bridging two worlds of healthcare. As always, sometimes I love when we have the perfect guest to bridge history and care. You'll learn why asking how's your family isn't just small talk. I mean, this is true for most people who want to be known as people, not just diseases. Why traditional palm oil creates an impossible choice between cultural identity and cardiac health, and why mental health stigma runs so deep that even pastors struggle to address depression. More than 60,000 Congolese now live in the United States, and nearly half arrived as refugees, carrying trauma from what some call Africa's World War, conflicts that have killed over 5 million people. And when healthcare fails the Congolese community, diabetes rates climb, tuberculosis spreads, and mental health crisis can fracture families. I always want to have episodes of hope and to give you hope to care for the different communities. And we haven't done a country-based episode in some time, so I'm excited to do this today. And Jean Jacques is very optimistic and hopeful about the future of the DRC, but also how we can all work together to care for the Congolese community. We'll cover a little bit of history today as well as care, and you learn about what it means to take care of the Congolese identity, which is actually more than 450 ethnic groups speaking over 5,000 dialects. Here's Jean Jacques. Welcome to the show, Jean Jacques.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Raj.
So first off, tell me about yourself and what you do with the community.
My name is Jean Jacques. I am the founder and CEO of the nonprofit called Congolese United Foundation. And Congolese United Foundation is a nonprofit based in Seattle, and it was created around the midst of COVID pandemic, around 2021, when I realized the need of educating Congolese and community about first COVID-19 and also other health issues. I noticed firsthand that communication was a challenge to access health services for many immigrants and refugees, especially for Congolese communities. And I decided to start a health board, bring my colleague health professionals from the Congo, from Angola, and from Congo Brazzaville to discuss what best approach we can put together to help our community and to create a formalized organization that can help really bridge the gap of services in Congolese community. That's why we created this organization. And we work and a lot educating, empowering community and provide resources for them so that they can navigate the healthcare system in the US, which is challenging, but also to meet their basic needs here as they decide to live in the United States. Outside of the work I do in my community, I'm the director of the Entrepreneur Service Average Medical Center, where I oversee language access and offer tools to help provide better care to NFP patients that come to Average Medical Center.
Yeah, amazing. And what is your personal history? What brought you to Seattle? And did you grow up in Congo?
Yes, I was born, raised, and grew up in Congo. So I spent mostly 30 plus years in Congo. I was born and raised. I went to the medical school in Kinshasa, in the school of medicine in Kinshasa. And I done from medical school. I practiced medicine there. And then I decided to move from the Congo, Kinshasa to Seattle, straight to Seattle. I arrived in Seattle and I decided to join the army. So I spent some time in the U.S. Army. I served. And that's how I was passionate about language access, leadership, and serving community, because I've learned many values while serving the army. And one of them is like services. And it's about serving the community, put yourself first as a leader, but be able to listen and serve the community. That's why I decided. But I've been here for a while.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, let's talk about Congo. And before we get to the history, I think we underestimate how massive Congo is and how diverse it is. For example, French is the official language, but there's actually Lingala, Kikongo, if I'm saying that right, and 2 other languages. Help our listeners understand the diversity within Congo.
Wow. The Congo is massive and diverse. It's 1/4 of the surface of the United States, you can imagine. Can take up to like 7-8 states. It's 2.3 million square. And originally we have 6 regions. Now we have 26 regions we call provinces. And we have 1 official language, French. We have 4 national languages, which is, you mentioned Swahili, Chiluba, Lingala, and Kikongo. And we have more than 450 ethnic groups. Imagine more than 100 dialects. For each group have its own languages. And during the Mobutu regime, they tried to combine those big dialects to like one classical languages. So those 4 national languages emerged from the 450 plus dialects and cultures.
Could you explain the difference between the Republic of Congo and the Democratic African Republic of Congo?
Absolutely. The Democratic Republic of Congo, called former Zaire or Congo Kinshasa, it's a Belgian colony. While the Republic of Congo is Congo Brazzaville, is colonized, it was a French colony. And Brazzaville came from Savona de Brazza, was the French explorer who discovered these parts. Anecdotally, they said Savona de Brazza arrived to Brazzaville first, and David Livingstone came to discover the other part of Congo, crossed the river, because Brazzaville, Savona de Brazza at that time discovered this beautiful land, green space, and said, this is beautiful. But they didn't know what's going on the other side of the river. And they said, you have to cross the river because I was here, come here first. The Livingstones crossed the river. He found a harsh territory, really hostile, and decided to live there. But I didn't know that was the largest part of the Congo. And he discovered the Democratic Congo. And Livingstone worked with the King Leopold II, the King Leopold II, and the King Leopold II took this land that was called back the independent state of Congo. That was a one territory controlled by the King Leopold II. And in 1908, the King Leopold II transferred this land to the Belgium, and the Belgium became the owner of the colony. It became Congo Belge. So from 1908 to after the World War I, when Germany lost the first war, the Western community, now Rwanda and Burundi, become one part of the colony because there was a colony from Germany when they lost it. There was a treaty. The Belgium took over the lands. And also some of the English British colony was taken over by British. And that's from 2019, 16, 17 to late 40s, it became Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, and some of the territory of the DRC also share border of the Rwanda and Burundi. And then in 1960, it became independence. Become Congo independent.
And as I said, sometimes I know I have the right person because you just talked about the history, like you know it so well and didn't even prepare for this interview. That's incredible. And I do think understanding history is helpful for people to understand the context, because part of how people interact with people from Congo right now is because in 2019, more than 61,000 Congolese nationals residing in the U.S. and a total of 11,400 refugees resettled in the United States in the last year that I had, which was in the 2021, and 43% of them were from the DRC. So a lot of people that come to the U.S., and the history is an essential component of it. And then the other piece of why people have been named refugees is because of these big conflicts that have been there. Two specific ones, the first Congo War and the second Congo War, has different histories, but essentially they're connected to the different regimes. And how the second Congo War, some people say, had so much casualties that some places called the World War III because the number of people who died. Could you just let us know what else should we know about the conflict, which kind of drives the immigration of people from Congo to safer places?
Yeah, sure. But if you want to really understand the conflict, like you mentioned, First War, Second War, you need to go back and live in history to understand why there is conflict in the DRC. It wasn't because of the natural resources. I would say the DRC is guilty because of the wealth that the country has. We have many minerals, all the strategic minerals you can imagine that can help advance technology in many areas. And also the landscape, the region, is the only country that been between the equatorial region, the tropical region. So you have the nature that to grow crops from January to December. The soil is rich, the resources rich. And that's how the problem starts, because natural resources, many people want to come and take advantage of the country. And that's how those conflicts start. The first conflict, I'm saying, around the 60s, when the country became independent. That's the first root cause of the conflict start, when there was a wave of people coming from Rwanda who came to the DRC for work. And there was a challenge there for people who were challenging the national origins. And then the politics were involved. Many countries, including the US, was intervening to kind of pick food stability. And during the Mobutu regime, things was quite stable, but there was still issues about the people's identity, about where they are from. And when the genocide struck in 1994 in Rwanda, that's how the trouble started in saying, welcome refugees from Rwanda, because the UN asked them to create what they call in French zone temporal space, an international space when those refugees can come and settle. The goal was to open the border, to have the people settle for a time, and then they want to return back in Rwanda when it's getting better. But those people, most of them crossed the border was civilians and also military from the other regime, the Habyarimana regime, that was the former president was killed. There was a Hutu president. So those people, they call Interamwe and other people, to cross the border with weapons, and they start destabilizing this region since 1994, 95, 96. And then a smaller group started called IFDL with Laurent Desire Kabila. They take people, they come to Kinshasa in 1997, they take over Mobutu, and the country became Democratic Republic of Congo with Kabila, the father, Laurent Desire Kabila. And then he was killed in 2001. And the Sanjans Kabila took power. But the underlying cause of the rebels and the rebels group and the militia of people from Hutu and other people who commit genocide in Rwanda, who fled to get resources in Congo, stay in this border, because in eastern part there is borders, but also big forests. And the tropical region, people just hide for years there, commit crime and continue to kill people, innocent people, especially Congolese people. And that's why that's created this instability in the region. And many rebel groups, because they don't like the government, many reasons, they try to kind of involve, get weapons and try to get lands and control. And unfortunately, this region where there was war, there was a lot of resources, like coltan, because the eastern part is the world capital of coltan. There was coltan, all those strategic minerals. And those rebel groups keep exploiting those resources and not providing what they do to the government. So the government have no control for many years. They are exploiting those illegally, And Rwanda, unfortunately, was supporting those rebel groups because some of the migrants crossing through either Rwanda or Uganda to be sold to the international market. And many big corporations get involved with this war because it becomes an economic reason for them to get their first cheap labor because they use young people to work on these mining companies and the forced labor. And those rebel groups, they pay no tax. There is no control. They have control of the land, the resources. They can exploit the way they want and they create a big chaos. And that's have been for almost 2 decades. And World War II was like more than 50 million people killed on those.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think people underestimate how interconnected our world is and what we're talking about in that DRC has the world's largest cobalt reserve specifically, which has used all lithium ion batteries. So any smartphone you have has cobalt, right? So how connected it is and how China, all these international countries are part of DRC's current state because of the resource extraction. And some people call it the quote unquote resource curse because of how other countries can extract and harm the country with the resource because they know they want it.
Yes, exactly. And there are still enough damage in the country because of the situation. Now, with the current regime of President Felix Tshisekedi, we see a change, even on policy, because we pushed a lot. On the military side, the DRC was not strong enough to fight the rebel groups because they was backed by the Rwanda military troop. It's been documented for many years. And now the United Nations took a resolution condemning the Rwanda and forcing them to withdraw from the DRC, which is the good state. Now, those rebel groups need to draw their weapons and leave the area so that the area can be secure. And now there is also another push from the U.S. because the U.S. has recently want to sign a deal with the DRC to have exclusive opportunity to exploit those minerals because of the geopolitical situation now around the world. And they will have easy access to natural resources. So one of the conditions the DRC poses is stability and peace in the eastern part of it. So the United States is playing a key role now to bring peace between the DRC and Rwanda because those two countries are like, we have decided by fate to live together. And I'm telling people, we cannot kill it. We cannot get to kill each other. It's someone to come together to find an agreement and peace so we can work as they used to work before. It's surprising people because many people who, from my generation, studied with people from Rwanda. They come to DRC to study. Life was great before 1994, of course, and when to get involved, that created a complication. But I think with the new process of diplomatic issue from the United States and the international communities, we try to hopefully this time find a peace, a long-lasting peace that can have the country emerge.
It sounds like you feel more optimistic now than, do you feel optimistic about the future of Congo?
Yes, for many reasons, because we need just to hand this unnecessary war, because this unnecessary war is for natural resources. Persons are available and people are willing to call out. DRC is willing to cooperate with those corporations. So we just to make people accountable for what's happening in the past, because peace cannot be effective without making people accountable. There are people who must be accountable for the killings of the millions of people from DRC and from Rwanda. If people who are judged and condemned for what they have done to the genocide in 1994, there are also people that be condemned for what they're doing in DRC for many years. You mentioned the first war of Congo and the second war of Congo. But we need to identify those people. There are people behind those actions. They need to be brought to justice because we can have peace if those people are not accountable. They are living in both part of the DRC or the Rwanda. We make us feel accountable what happened so that this will never happen again. This is what happened with the Jewish community. So we have to make those people accountable so that war, unnecessary war for natural resources, won't happen again in the DRC. I'm hoping because I see how the diplomatic work is working now with the United States involved, Rwanda and the DRC want to sign finally a peace treaty that's probably going to help the country move forward.
Yeah, that's great. So that's the context of how many Congolese come to the United States, especially as a refugee status or as a refugee. And there's a pretty sizable community here around in Washington State. And I'd like to get into the health part of the community by first talking about food, because it's always fun to talk about food. I know it's some staple food, cassava, plantains, rice, but take me into a Congolese kitchen, maybe yours. What does a typical family meal look like?
Okay, if I invite you to my house, this typical meal you can eat, of course, cassava leaves. It's a traditional, we call it like kind of a vegetable type or either in a Congolese way. And we always have catfish or any kind of fish and meats.
Yeah.
We love meat and also goats. We love goats, special big celebration. And we have beer and wine always. Rice sometimes. People from the western part, they eat some more rice. People from the Kasai region, when I'm from, like central part, eat a lot of cassava porridge, we call fufu. It's the porridge of the maize, the corn, maize, and cassava roots.
Yeah.
And then we have also plantains. And each of the region have some specific food. For instance, in eastern part where they call Congo Central, where there's the mix of beans with cassava leaves. They call it like chikamadis. They mix those, making like a really interesting sauce. And also the different parts, people, they love beans.
Yeah. And, when people come to the United States, somehow they just end up getting increased risk for diabetes and heart disease. Is that happening to the Congolese community? And what does it look like?
Yes. Chronic disease has become a trend. It became a new burden in the Congolese community because of the change of the food habits. People used to eat fresh food, cooked fresh food. And now with the living condition, they end up having more processed food. And it's created because of many reasons. Your parents, a lot of people don't have time to cook. They have to go 2 or 3 jobs. They're only just ready to eat meals, that sort of things. And they don't, even the weekend, usually have time. Most of the Congolese people after the church have time to stay home to cook meals and eat. But if there's work schedule here in the US, they can adjust. So they end up eating a lot of processed meats and also not a lot of physical activity and also alcohol consumption. Many Congolese, and many of them are heavy drinkers. They drink a lot of alcohol and also add to the burden of the chronic condition. We see more and more people complaining about blood pressure, diabetes, and also cancer. See, we have some unfortunate deaths due to cancer in our community. And the Congolese Foundation is working now to increase awareness about this condition and also for latent TB. We don't talk a lot about tuberculosis because we have seen, like you mentioned earlier, a wave of new asylum seeker immigrants, and the most part of they came from Angola and DRC. And those people, because they come from an endemic country for TB, we try to raise awareness and encourage to be screened for latent TB. Because most of the kids that come from DRC, they receive the BCG vaccine. Or this BCG vaccine always reacts when they do the skin test. So you try to educate patients when they go to see the provider to ask the blood test instead of the skin test, just because the skin test will always come back positive. But the blood test will help determine if they need to get a short-term treatment or not for the TB.
Yeah, definitely. So both chronic diseases and infectious disease, identifying them in the community is important. If you're talking about all this social stressors that's occurring in the community, part of what we do in healthcare systems talk about ways to address them, especially with food. Is there specific food-related advice that you would give to the community that clinicians and healthcare professionals should be aware of for the Congolese community?
Yeah. One of the things is probably to get the low-fat meal because it contains less fat. And also to transform some of the oil they use to prepare, because most of the Congolese traditionally use palm oil, and palm oil is heavy on fat. Try to reduce them, and we try to educate them to use olive oil or low-fat oil. There are some different kind of oil people can use, but it's a tradition. It's a behavior. They are from back home. It's really hard. And also when they cook with like all cassava leaves with palm or olive oil, it tastes different. It's not the good taste. Like it's not the same thing. And you cannot convince a mom or grandma or grow up who just came here to visit and go to cook cassava leaf not with palm oil. It's impossible. We try them to okay, can you not put a lot, just reduce it. If you put for the cassava leaf, what you're gonna make your meat, for instance, if you wanna grill your meat, just use olive oil. And also make those accessible, but unfortunately, most of the time, those oil are quite expensive for some families. They cannot purchase them all the time. It also costs because most of the families are low and middle income families, and accessing those food are a challenge, I would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then I think red palm oil, I don't know if that's good for you or not. I think that's pretty unique. I don't find it at regular stores. Do you counsel about that oil at all?
Yes, we could counsel it to reduce the intake because we can find those in like African stores or Spanish stores because also Latino community use those oil a lot. But we try to educate, but it's like a lost battle. I would say I think it was a lost battle because the way some of the food, the way they cook it require those amounts of oil. It is not the same thing. If you change And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of the nutritionists and people who work specifically with African foods to find alternatives, really.
Yeah.
It's more like a general, okay, you cannot eat this, but how can you translate those to this culture? We try our best, working with the dietitians here that I have some colleagues, we try to say which one can be the alternative for those different type of food. We try to come up one or two, but when you see the cost of those, it's not really
not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy for them.
What's your favorite food?
Beans, rice, meat. I love meat. I actually just didn't think, but beans is my top one. It has been beans and rice has been my so since I was a kid, beans I can eat them like every day.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. The next segment I'd like to review is about culture. And that's a hard one to talk about sometimes. But specifically, culture around health beliefs is important. And a lot of the material or resources about the Congolese community.
It became a challenge for the Congolese community to raise a child in the United States because the environment, the community that surrounds the child is not the same. Belief system is not the same. The culture is not the same. Become the culture first, the language is the barrier. Most of the people in the community don't speak English. There's English, the second or third, like for me, English was my fourth language. So if you came to a country when English is your first language, you need to adjust. Yeah. When you usually on the weekend go drop your son to your grandma, to your mom, which is grandma, to take care of the son when you go to work or go to church. But here you have to pay to put like your son in daycare. Those have changed a lot. And sometimes you come here on your wife and your kids, no family around you, you feel depressed, you feel isolated. That's why many Congolese church play a huge role of community gathering. People want to go to church Sunday. Some of them go to pray, but other people go because they want to see their peer from the community. They can speak French, they can see their pastor, they can have the feeling that they are in Kinshasa in theirs. And that's why also church play a huge role on bringing community together, fostering this welcomeness, this inclusivity, but also church, although not enough resources, they lack a lot. And there's a conflict between what they believe as a system from the Congolese perspective and the U.S. believe, about many social problems like LGBTQ issue, for instance. Those issues are not existent in a Congolese culture. How do we feel comfortable being in the type of environment when people don't share the same values of Christianity? And many parents, many people in the Congolese community struggle to accept the fact they are in a country when we welcome diversity. For them, diversity is to be able to speak a different language. But here, diversity is more than just speaking a different language. It's about how do you identify yourself. For instance, in the Congolese culture, we only have how we identify ourselves as man and female. But in the US, there are different genders. There are pronouns. The concept of pronouns for them. It's a concept that exists in the Congolese culture. So how to freshly arrive from DRC accept this concept that there is a non-binary person.
Yeah, that's hard. I'm reflecting that spirituality is a big piece of the culture.
Yes.
When I was preparing for this interview, I realized it said something like more than 90% of Congolese are Christians. I think there's a smaller percentage who are Muslims. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense how the church is a big part of the community and how you retain both the intergenerational connection and the Congolese community of support. And it sounds like it still exists.
Yeah.
And maybe the part of that also informs of how you integrate it with American culture with that background, right? Yeah. Are there any other health beliefs that you think would be important for healthcare professionals to know about the Congolese community?
I mean, most of the Congolese are Christian. A few of them are Muslim. Some have also some religious beliefs. Some people believe in Buddha. Some people have Freemasons. Have different philosophical beliefs. They are the different ranges, especially because those regions are also part of the Congolese community civilization in DRC. You can see people, especially people, elite people who went to the university, have different belief systems. Again, some people who identify themselves as gay, as lesbian, they don't say it publicly. That's why providers should be aware, ask those questions. How do you identify yourself? People be comfortable telling you, don't assume that the people, we know for sure, naturally people say there's male, female, but some of the people identify themselves as gay and lesbian. And provided don't miss those group of people and provide care. It's better to ask those questions. That's why I like the approach our person have to have the DEI questions, not to ask questions specific about gender identity, to make sure those patients, when they come to the clinic, those Congolese people receive the care they deserve. they won't speak up. So it's up to the provider to be intentional when they ask those questions to make sure the patient receive the care they deserve.
Yeah, that's an important point because no one's asked him. And only by you acknowledging and asking will you be able to support the community fully. There's another sense of taking care of the Congolese community because of how Western, both colonial governments and other corporate institutions have done medical campaigns in the DRC, but both managing diseases, syphilis, leprosy, you name it, as well as, I think, medical examinations that sometimes are forced to receive injections in the name of public health.
Exactly.
And do you think that has transferred here into distrust? I can imagine some people coming in and vaccinating you without telling you in the DRC, and you coming here and we're saying, well, we got 10 more vaccines to give you of what you would think. How do you feel like the community?
Yeah, there was lots of trust, especially during many campaigns, like you mentioned, forced campaign to eradicate some communicable disease, like polio, cholera. They just announced on the radio, as you're going to have this campaign from June 23rd to June 26th. From this time to time, bring your child or have your child available, have your door open. Someone will come to vaccinate. Not enough communication. It's a way they communicate for a large campaign. And also because we have this traditional medicine, we call medicine tradition. And there is like no Western medical system that still exists. So people got treated in a traditional way. This also raised a lot of suspicion. When they come here, they get a little bit explanation, but most of the things in English, in the normal public health, they don't really understand. And they have doubt about vaccine since there was misleading information that came from social media and also that spread across the many communities that vaccines are not safe. And now we struggle a lot. I'm one of the chair of the Images and Action Coalition Washington. We try to raise awareness. We see vaccine hesitancy and vaccine uptake really low among adults. Children is easy because to school, our children are required to go to receive vaccine before going to school, but adults have reluctant to get vaccine because of some misinformation that was spread in the community, and that's posed a lot of issues, a public health threat to eradicate some of the vaccine-preventable disease.
Part of the DRC's community history, I feel like, is also informing the mental health of the community. I know in many immigrant communities, mental health is hard to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had many conversations about this. With the DRC, I know a lot of refugees and asylum seekers also experience trauma, but it seems there's lots of community trauma in DRC because of the violence people have witnessed.
Mm-hmm.
How does the community heal from that? And has there been anything that's been helpful?
The church has been helpful, prayer, gathering with brothers and sisters, the only resource that is available in the Congolese community for DMT. Because the first, mental illness is not well perceived in the Congolese jargon community. Issues of mental illness, maybe you're crazy or you're possessed by bad spirits. So having a mental issue is not something people accept. Even if the mental breakdown, people don't accept it and they will try to cope with it. But they don't have an appropriate way to do it. Since they don't acknowledge having an issue, then they don't access the service available here at low cost, sometimes for free. Some of the Congolese regret to take medication, but because they don't come forward, they don't express the need. And that's why there's a really missed opportunity in the Congolese community to access mental health services. And the few services offered for us, some organizations, Congolese Foundation try also to create that healing circles. But healing circles don't touch really the bottom. It's not tailored for each individual. Someone who lost his family or his son on the way here, you're walking, the son died, you cannot have a proper funeral for a family member. How can you have this person heal? Or you can have healing circle to tell the story, but emotionally this person are still lost. And we don't have resources. We don't have trained mental health specialists. Congolese who look like us, who speak the language, can understand a better community. And when we refer people to the mental health services because we believe they can receive it, they can benefit from it, they want to acknowledge they have mental issues because of the historical, like I mentioned, trauma and fear of being rejected by the community. Because if you come forward and say, I have this issue with me, or see you as being crazy or possessed by demons, which is not true at all. Mental health is not about being possessed by demons or being crazy. It's just everybody in some way in life go through this mental health crisis and we need support. Some of them through medication if needed, something by counseling and seeing a psychologist, having those resources And the United States offers all those resources. And some people have insurance that can cover the cost of those services, but they don't know how to request because they feel ashamed to come forward and say they have issue. We're working with pastors it's a really difficult conversation to have, frankly, in the community. So trying to approach those faith-based leaders, try to see what we can do to help those populations, because we see the struggle in the community. We see family get separated, people got divorced because of the issue. And we see the reflection on the families. The kids suffered lots for those separations and might have the issue.
Yeah.
And we don't have the best way. We tried churches, but hopefully maybe in the future we can find the best way to tackle this complex issue.
Yeah. Do you think that alcohol use is connected to this? Because that came out in maybe some readings of the alcohol use is normalized in DRC, but here coping with trauma can become unhealthy. I don't know if you're seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah, single people mostly, or just go to a breakout, a divorce, or they go to alcohol, or because some of them, they come like international students, they feel isolated. The only way out for them is to drink. We have seen this new generation more and more of falling into alcohol to find a way to cope with the mental stress they have. It's an issue. Some of people drink because they can't cope with the situation they're dealing with. But most of the time, it's because people really don't trust the system to be open to receive services. I would say it's a lack of trust, because if they don't see professionals speak their languages, if people don't understand our culture, their perspective, it's hard for them to open up and seek resources and services.
Yeah, and I can imagine there's not a lot of Congolese therapists.
Even those who speak French, they are not really culturally appropriate, like humble to really take time to listen. And also that issue that many providers missed, it's not about the language itself. It's not by providing an interpreter that you solve the issue for the Congolese people need to feel that the provider is here. It's not about 15-minute appointment, but coming to my daughter to tell my daughter what's going on with me and my family. That's how we keep people. I remember it's provided in my clinic. The patient come to me with many issues I have to address at some time. And sometimes I can send an issue based on the story the patient tells. But sometimes many I spoke with, they have the feeling that the patient, the doctor only have 15 minutes. Sometimes spend time tapping on the computer, don't look at me. I don't feel heard, I don't feel seen. Even though they have the interpreter maybe on the screen, on the video, on the phone, I don't feel that the provider pay attention. It's that feedback you get. I'm not satisfied about my appointment because thanks to the colonization, people have a great expectation from a doctor. A doctor is something we have to respect. When you go to see my doctor, I have to find an answer. But here, when it comes to my doctor, I spend 15, 20 minutes, 1 minute. That makes sense. People don't understand that in the Congolese community. So we try sometimes to educate, to explain, you can for this problem, fix it. And also the referral system. People don't understand. I can because I have the stomach ache and they send me to see a GI doctor. My doctor didn't take care of it. I know when you send you a referral for a GI doctor, you're going to take a month to be seen by a problem. I think Congo is that you have this problem. Let's call my colleague and come and check with you out. And we're going to solve the problem while you're here. And they bring this expectation here, not knowing the African system in US, it's different, it's complex to navigate. And with our organization try to explain, but it takes time for people to really understand, to feel comfortable and understand the system so that they can receive the care they deserve.
Yeah, I heard that from some other communities too, where you imagine you just go to one place for all your care and one person. And you come here, you're referred to a university over there or radiology over there. You have to travel to different places to get tests and see doctors too. I believe we undereducate people on what healthcare means here.
Yeah.
And it's people often compare it to their own country, which is significantly different because of so many factors. Unfortunately, in almost all ways, they're disappointed here because it's more complicated and you pay for insurance and you still get a big bill. I've heard those stories
exactly.
too.
It's under fault because the system was not created for them in the first place. That's how we make people. You have to understand that the system was not created for you in the first place. And when you come here, you are supposed to know the system. So our role as our community organizations to teach you how to navigate the system that was not created for you in the first place. You come here not because they don't want you, but you want to accommodate the new system. So you have to learn on your own how to navigate the system. And the community organization, we do the work to help you. But we don't have all the answers. We cannot fix the issue because we don't have power to change the system per se.
You can't change U.S. health policy? Come on, Jean Jacques.
It's hard. It takes time. It takes a lot of advocacy and a lot of work behind the scene and bringing a lot of people together. It's requires a lot of work. We can, but it takes time. Big change in the U.S. take time, take years to change. But you're right. It always be positive. We can change policies, but it takes time.
Takes time, commitment, and community organizing. That's great. Have you heard from the community or maybe yourself of a clinician providing excellent culturally responsive care to the Congolese?
Yes. I've heard a lot of good comments from program health plans, especially health plans in Des Moines, health plans in Taquila, Arbor Medical Center, International Medicine Clinics. Because the way the entrance of those patients is quite different. They feel like I'm in Kinshasa with this clinic. They take their time to sit with me, asking questions about my family. That's different. And we say, provider, welcome you to his office and ask the first question, how are you doing? How's your family? That's attract people. And when this provider, he asked me a question about what I did last week. How was my routine? How's my sleep? Those are unusual questions to get to understand people. And many primary care doctors in Harborview and HealthPoint do this excellent job to get the time they need to talk to the patient. And this is what we want. I had a lot of positive feedback from people in my communities. And that's how I want people to provide to behave.
Yeah. In some ways, you want that to happen for every patient, right?
Exactly.
Treat them like a human.
Exactly.
I think even more important when you're from a different country and there's a gap between what your experience is living in this world and somebody else's, and trying to connect with people. That's great. That's such an actionable item about asking about family, asking about your daily experience and connecting with folks that way. Okay, last question. If you could teach one thing to doctors and nurses caring for the Congolese community, what would it be?
Take their time to be patient, to create relationships. Because in the Congolese community, relationships is more important than anything. Okay, I know if I'm incurable disease or cancer, whatever, I would die, but the experience I have with you, my provider, is the most important. And for Congolese, we care a lot about the relationships you have to establish. If you want to hear my story as a patient, you have to take the time to read. If you cannot see me now, please tell me if you cannot see now why you cannot see. Just don't cancel the appointment without notice. It's not good. But taking the time to hear me, because Congolese people have a lot of story to tell. And maybe behind a communicable disease, there is a story of sexual violence, rape, abuse. That's why I ask providers, especially for people of female reproductive age, when they come for pregnancy, if they're immigrant refugees, just have those questions behind the scene to understand their story. That will help you either provide appropriate care and to refer them to appropriate resources. Some other people are ashamed to say, okay, she has pregnant, she was sexually abused on her way here to the US. And they feel ashamed for what happened for the pregnancy itself, not knowing the father, and also because of the condition. And probably they can refer them to other services that can help this patient. That's why I always recommend provide my only advice to take the time to ask questions and don't assume. And ask questions to help those people, because maybe the clinician is the first and only hope many of the people have. Some of them don't have family and friends. Community organizations can help, but some of the people don't open up to us easily. They only say things to the provider, and maybe the only hope is the provider. So it's a provider to take time and speak to them so that they can share what they have, be open and share. Also be patient with them because they don't speak the language. Sometimes we try to tell them like 1 or 2 sentences in English, but if they don't speak the language, please use an interpreter to be able to listen to them and provide the best service.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jean Jacques. It was great having you here.
Sure.
As always, thank you for listening to Healthcare for Humans. If you've found any value in this podcast, I have 2 quick requests. 1, please leave a review in the podcast app that you're listening to my voice in right now. It really helps others discover the show. 2, share this episode with anyone who you think might benefit from it. For easy access to all our episodes and to support the podcast, visit www.healthcareforhumans.org. There you'll find our content clearly organized by topics, countries, themes, to help you choose what to listen to next. Until next time, this is Dr. Raj Sundar, reminding you that culturally responsive care leads to better patient outcomes. See you again soon.